And we're on. Hello, everyone. This is Lou Covey from Footwasher Media, and I'm here with our panel on journalism at the Crossroads, based on a survey that I took a few weeks ago and published about how corporations are becoming more trusted than journalism for trusted content. And I brought in an illustrious panel with me today. I got Lou Hoffman, the CEO of the Hoffman Agency in San Jose, and well, not just San Jose, worldwide. Lou, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, good to be here, Lou. Thanks for having me.
Okay, and we've got John Blyler, the editorial director of JB Tech Systems. He has been an engineer and a journalist for some time, as we've worked together both on my side in PR when I was doing that, and also as a contributor to his publication. And now he started his own thing. John, thank you for joining us there.
Thank you, Lou.
And our mission, don't worry about it, it'll lock up every once in a while. Bernard Murphy is the CTO of Atrenta, which is a high-tech public or company, not a publication, in San Jose, California. And he is also a prolific contributor to other technical publications. So what we've got here is a nice roundtable of people who are all affected by this situation. And that situation is that journalism is changing, and it affects all of us in different ways. My particular interest in this is how the need for trusted content is becoming an absolute necessity in business today. Basically because trusted content in journalism has been going away because of the economic issues in the publications. And I'd kind of like to open it up right now with Lou Hoffman and see how it's affected his particular business.
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right, Lou. The issue of trusted content is what it's all about, and we've seen an erosion of that in journalism. And what it does is it opens up a lot of opportunities for the broader communications business. And what we see, well, let me just go back in time. A few years ago, I moderated a panel at the Innovation Journalism Conference at Stanford. And this was a room filled with 100 or so people, mainly journalists, but also communicators. And in the middle of this panel, I just asked the question, do you trust information that isn't coming from journalists? And most of the hands went up. And then a second thing was asked, and that was this idea of can useful content come from other means? And of course it can. And as this panel evolved, what really came out of it was that people, at the end of the day, to a large extent, people don't care where content originates. What they care about is A, as you pointed out, that it's trusted, but then B, as a subset under that, that it's useful. And people are finding that useful information can absolutely come from, whether you call it corporate journalism, branded journalism, what have you. And that in turn does open up a lot of opportunities for the broader communications business, because it gives us an opportunity to essentially be a publisher.
Okay. John, I'm going to turn this part over to you. As a journalist, how have you been able to adjust to this change? Or are you even embracing it at all?
Oh my goodness. I guess there's been challenges from all over the place. There's the traditional models that supported business models that supported what's the word, traditional journalism or traditional reporting, if you will, have all changed because of the internet, because of access, because of the citizen blogger, I guess you'd say. So it's difficult to use that as a support vehicle. So a lot of us, as you know, especially in maybe use the bit niche EDA or semiconductor space as an example, a lot of the publishers are now gone, or they're owned by, give the mysterious story there, owned by like you were saying earlier, Lou, Electronic Products is now owned by Arrow Electronics, which is a big distributor. There may be nothing wrong with that, but more and more the corporations and editors are coming together, and journalists are still providing good content. But if you want to cover the entire space, and if you want to do it in, I said I wasn't going to use the word unbiased, but if you want to do it in a way that at least resembles what was traditional journalism, that part of it is disappearing. However, you make the point in your kind of earlier, wrap-up here or thesis that that corporate journalism is trusted, and I think that's probably true. How can it not be with such good, editors now behind the corporate wall? But that's again a bit nichey, isn't it? I mean, you go to a certain company and you'd expect a certain message, and you'll, as an engineer anyway, you'll get useful information, but you wouldn't expect them to cover the whole space. So it's tricky.
Yeah, part of it, I think, is that there are so many sources of information, and people can make their own decisions, and my assistant is joining us, as you can see. It used to be, under the Marshall McLuhan paradigm, that there were so few sources of information that you could just use that advertising and PR to push out a message, and people would just accept it after a while because they'd be pounded with it for so long. But people today have more opportunity to ignore corporate messaging altogether. They can just say, we know that's crap. We're going to go look for something else, and oh wow, I've got this thing called the internet that can help me find stuff. So if you can create content that's of value to those people that they will trust and come back to, that becomes actually a profit center that a lot of corporations haven't really realized yet. I think the Content Marketing Institute says that while companies that are using a strategic content approach to their messaging and their media, they're having great success with that. But less than 1% of all the companies in the country are actually doing a strategic approach to content. And that kind of brings me around here to you, Bernard, because I said you've been producing a lot of content that's going up on the UBM networks with EE Times and EDN Network and that sort of thing. And it seems to be a fairly new thing for you and for Atrenta. What's the strategy behind what you're doing there?
Well, I guess first, in some ways, I'm kind of a beneficiary of this shift because I'm an in-house guy, so I am acting, at least in part, as a journalist, but really doing it for Atrenta. And we see an opportunity, and I see an opportunity to get a message out, but we're trying to do it in, not a grossly commercial way, but we're trying to interleave some of the things that we want to say about our company and our product with a broader view observations on trends in the market. Because I strongly believe that something that just manifestly looks like a kind of running a business for our company is automatically going to turn people off. Whereas something that looks like a set of views still come from the company, but that talk about broader market trends, is at least going to be interesting to some set of people. And so we're trying to do, I guess, walk a fine line between being an in-house geek and being interesting to a broader market.
Now, that changes the strategy for just the business model for a lot of people. Let's go back to you, Lou, for a second here. How is this changing your business model as a public relations agency?
Well, I think the most obvious way is at the 10,000-foot level. If you look at our business breakdown, our revenue breakdown, we're let's say 10 years ago, I would say, 80%, maybe 85% of our revenue was what I would call traditional PR. So that's media relations, writing news releases, speaking opportunities, those types of things. You fast forward to today, and I would say it hasn't quite flipped, but I would say certainly over 50% of our business now comes from, under this broad umbrella of, let's call it, corporate publishing, and that can take many different forms, everything from newsletters to blogs. I think what's interesting to me about it, and just to go back to a point you keep coming back to, Lou, and that is this one of trust. As you start to dig into what trust means when it comes to content and publishing, it's not just trusting the source to be objective. I think trust is about not just that, but also it can be a form of trusting the source to offer a legitimate point of view. So it's not just unbiased. So for example, if you go back to the poster child of corporate publishing, branded journalism, Cadence, when people go to Cadence and they read something from Brian Fuller, they understand that it's not going to be objective, that there's going to be a point of view that comes from the Cadence filter. But that's okay with them because they can factor that into the whole equation, and what they're taking away is useful information. So if I look at our business, we're essentially doing that now for maybe not quite 50% of our clients, but a lot of our clients have some type of publishing component to it, and in some cases it's the largest component of what we're doing for them. But I think what's key, and it's already been a common theme this morning, is you've got to be able to deliver content that's useful to the target audience, not just promotional, not just advertisements.
Okay. That, I think, brings me back to you, John, because you've essentially launched a new business. You were with one publishing organization for a very long time, and we're right at the center of it, and suddenly, for whatever reason, we don't want to get into that, you're no longer there, and you're doing your own thing, like so many others have. I mean, this week, Tom Feremsky announced that he was still going to be the Silicon Valley Watcher, but he's now working in-house as an editorial coordinator for a company with a product, not a publication, but a product. Lou Hoffman mentioned Brian Fuller, who went from UBM to Cadence Design, and actually joined a former UBM employee, Richard Gehring, there. And during his tenure, the entire industry has seen, or his industry has seen, a switch over to the point where Cadence is now the most trusted source of information in that industry, with UBM publications actually coming in third now. But that's great when you're a company that can own, has enough money to actually buy that kind of a staff. But you're working in the trenches of all the other companies who, like Atrenta, don't have those kind of resources. So how is this, what's your business model now going into this new paradigm?
Yes, that's what my wife asked me. Excuse me. Well, let me answer that, and I'll answer it by kind of highlighting a couple things here. The comment that and Brian Fuller, continues to generate good material, of course, and Mike Santorini, and there's a whole slew of other folks out there, former editors from the former big publishers. I guess I would say in general, or the pitch that I use anyway when I'm talking to advertisers and sponsors, is to say the corporate message is gotten very good. Certainly, folks like Cadence. Although you wouldn't expect Cadence to give you kind of an overall view of the entire industry in areas that they don't have a product. So there still is a need for that kind of coverage. Someone who understands all the hardware and the software and the board and the chip and the whatever it is, the system level, and to speak to it at that level rather than just a particular focus on what companies might offer. having said that, it's become very difficult for a traditional editor, right? All the publishers are now, a lot have gone away. There's several of us that have started our own firms, and that's fine and that's good. I mean, we like writing, we like covering the market in general, but there's continues to be downward pressure on doing that. So it's going to be difficult for us to, I think, for a lot of us over the long run, to stay in business unless you can offer something else. My background as an engineer and my ties to the university allow me to do that through training and through so other things. So the picture is changing. I mean, what worked for us in the past isn't working now, and it'll change in the future. And I chat occasionally with some of the other independents like myself after a few drinks, and we're all facing a market, at least in certain niche areas, that's diminishing. So several of us are trying to look to broader markets where there is still a need for the more total picture, I guess you'd say.
Okay, Bernard, as this change happens, do you think companies like Atrenta will be looking to provide resources like this, or they're going to continue to focus only on in-house? Because Atrenta, it's a great company, sure, but it's not Cadence, okay? It's not IBM. It's a small company. So are your resources enough to be able to handle it in-house, or do you think you might actually be looking for something else?
Well, that's a good question. I think as an in-house attempt to model on a very small scale what Cadence is doing, we face some challenges. I mean, everything we do ultimately has to have a business metric. And one of the challenges is that the channels out there like UBM and semi-engineering and so on are, for whatever reason, not set up or don't choose to provide metrics in a very digestible form. So they'll give you kind of hand-waving representation. Yeah, we've got lots of clicks on that. But no, we didn't get very many clicks. Actually, they'll never tell you that because they want you to believe that everything is getting lots of clicks. So the problem is that we are not getting metrics. A well-functioning business runs on metrics. So I think either that has to change in some manner, and these guys like LinkedIn, who is a very good example of a channel that does provide good metrics real time. They have to do things like LinkedIn does, or we have to find some other channel to work through. And the challenge for that, as always with a small company, is you just don't have as much latitude to pay for outsourcing that kind of thing.
Okay, that brings up a real interesting question, and that is the question of metrics. Because we were talking offline about this, that you're providing a good amount of content for UBM, and they're not giving you jack all in the form of metrics for what you're doing for them. It's that wonderful, as you say, hand waving and saying, "Oh, we're going to give you what is it? Exposure." Okay?
Yeah.
But you have no idea if you're actually about what you're exposing and to whom, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump back to Lou here because I know that we're really metrics focused in our business. What are you doing as far as providing metrics for the content that you're creating for your clients?
Well, I think the beauty of going where all your work or a lot of your work is online and you're publishing is once you're online, everything is measurable. So in a lot of ways, it's much easier than trying to rationalize and measure your traditional PR that's based on media coverage. So in the case of, and I would say out of all the different forms of publishing, the probably the biggest thing that we do is helping our clients establish blogs as industry sources. And in those cases, the measurement becomes pretty straightforward, starting with Google Analytics. So you can measure obviously what type of traffic you're bringing in, how long those people are staying, are they engaged, so on and so forth. The other thing that you can do, and that we have started to do with clients, is to start to now measure how many of those readers on the blog will then jump onto the corporate site of the company. And then from there, you can actually measure how many go into the sales funnel and take some type of call for action. So there's lots of different things. Once you're in the digital realm, like I said, everything can be measured and quantified.
Okay.
Well, yeah, but yes, I mean, you're right. I'm sorry, Lou. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead. This is supposed to be interactive.
This metrics question is something that I face all the time as well, both before and now on my own. And you've got to have metrics, certainly, and you can do that online. Of course, you know, as they say, with statistics, right, you can make whatever conclusion you want come out of it. So with metrics, you know, you have to make sure that a site isn't being spoofed. You have to make sure that, you know, tricks aren't being played, like taking a blog, dividing it into a small blog, divided it into 4 pieces, so you get, you know, 4 times as many click-throughs. Just all of these, you know, sorts of things that some folks do, you know, hire college kids to make comments so it looks like you're being well followed and one thing or another. If you can have those guarantees in place, then the metrics do become meaningful. But I don't think the general reader in particular is aware of that when they're looking at some of this.
Yeah, that's been our discovery too. That Google Analytics is not what people think it is.
Yeah, in fact, we've been looking at things like mention.com.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the greatest tool either, but we're looking around for things that give press mentions. I guess, you know, to go to the stratosphere, Apple uses someone that tracks TV mentions and print mentions and all kinds of things, but that's way beyond the capabilities of most companies.
Yeah, we've been working with some marketing automation companies now for about 7 months and have been actually quite surprised at the difference between what they produce and what something like Google Analytics does. And what we discovered is Google Analytics tracks everyone who comes through with an email address. Everyone. So a company can go in and buy 500,000 yahoo.com email addresses. And they can just go through and click through, and Google Analytics will say, these are all your unique visits. And they're not really human beings. Whereas some of the marketing automation companies like Marketo and SharpSpring and Sales Monago actually have filters in place to identify those robots that are actually coming on and filter them out. So actually the numbers you get are much, much lower, but they're much more valuable.
No, but Lou, I hear you, but I think to me the flaw in the thinking is you to just look at Google Analytics as pure raw traffic, and the pure raw traffic has little meaning.
Right.
But what it does allow you to do is to drill into it a little bit deeper, and at that point it does start to have meaning. And if you can continue to track in a way that you can then see that there was enough interest in this blog, in this industry resource, to then jump over into the corporate site, then you've got something. The other thing that I do think is also really useful to track is if you're doing any kind of publishing where you're trying to position the client as an industry resource, to look at traffic that is coming in through organic search and category searches. So I know we keep using Cadence as a poster child, and I'll just keep using them. If someone is looking at something like not searching on Cadence, but looking at design tools or looking at EDA tools, then that traffic, that's a category search. So and that person is coming into the blog, and then you can track the behavior of that that individual, and if that individual takes any kind of call for action or again jumps over to cadence.com, and then I think you've got something. So this this theory of trying to close the loop in traffic, we're still, honestly, we're still experimenting, and it's still early days.
Yeah.
But I think I agree with you. Google Analytics isn't an end-all to be-all, but I think it is an important one piece of the overall puzzle that you can start to understand if your effort to be an industry resource is really accomplishing anything.
Well, I agree with that pretty much completely. Yeah, that if you're not doing anything else, you need to at least do Google Analytics. It is the very basic thing you can do. But I have problems with companies that think that they are doing really good based on the very least they will measure. I'm still getting companies that are saying we get X number of unique visitors every month. So unique visitors don't mean anything. They can come on for 1 second and be measured as a unique visitor. That's not value.
No, you're right. It's not value. But if I look at, for example, we do work with a company that's does online shipping software. And so a category search, what we find is a lot of their prospective customers are always comparing Federal Express versus UPS versus United States Postal Service. And so when we zero in on those category searches around those keywords, and that traffic is coming in based on those searches, and then they're jumping over to the client site, taking some call for action, to me, I think that's a job well done, because you're generating incremental traffic through being an industry resource.
Yes, but most companies don't measure that.
Okay.
That's the problem.
All of this is really good, but for the little guys like us, I know you believe the basics are not enough, but we're just looking right now for, are we generating content that is getting a lot of interest, because that raises our overall visibility. Everything else you're talking about is, of course, very good and great and kind of the next steps, but we've got to kind of get to the first step. We can't do that.
And that's kind of why I'm doing this thing right now, is that there are next steps. There are the basics, but there are other things that can be done, and there are resources out there for companies that don't have to put in as much of an investment as cadence.com does. There are resources that can help you track stuff. The thing I like about marketing automation is that it will tell you if your content sucks. But by me recommending certain sales automation companies, it doesn't do me any good initially. But if I can get a company to do that, they can see within a few weeks how bad their content really is and what they have to do to improve it. And they have to come back to me and say, can you help? And I say, yeah, that's what I want to do. And that's when I can recommend people like John Blyler, and I can introduce them to people like Bernard Murphy, and say, look, these resources are here. It doesn't have to cost you an arm and a leg, and if you do just a little bit of it, it will help you so much, which is why I'm so excited about this change in the paradigm of journalism, where it's no longer siloed in a publication. It's now, the possibilities are really open for us to build a network of trust throughout industry to help society, and to do that thing that everybody's making fun of now, to make this a better world. Anyway, I said I wanted to keep this to 30 minutes, and that's what we've done here. I think this has been a great conversation. I hope maybe we can do it again soon. But I want to thank Lou Hoffman from the Hoffman Agency, Bernard Murphy from Atrenta, and John Blyler from JB Systech. And I advise you to follow these guys, because they know what they're talking about. Gentlemen, thank you for this time, and thank you everyone for listening. This is Lou Covey with Footwasher Media.
Cheers. Bye.
Thank you, Lou. Bye all.
Bye.